Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM.
Business Matters. The title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Yes, you just joined me, Anwar Moolla, on the Business Matters program. The Business Matters program brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. You're on Radio Al Ansar. It's Monday, the 24th of February, and we've just gone 20 minutes past 7. A virtual guest on the studio tonight, and her name is Dr. Swastika Juggernath. She is the director of a firm called Conversation with Swas, a business management consulting firm. With that, let me say a very warm welcome to Radio Al Ansar, to Swastika. Swastika, good evening and welcome.
Good evening and welcome salam to you, Anwar, and to your listeners this afternoon.
Swastika, where are you joining us from?
I'm from Durban, Shallcross to be specific.
Okay. When they said you're joining us virtually, I thought you were you are based in Johannesburg. No. Okay.
Durban.
Okay.
A Durbanite, born and bred.
Born and bred. Okay, so not too far away from us. It would have been nice to have had you in the studio, but we'll do this virtually anyhow. Swastika, I'm a bit intrigued with the name of your firm before we get into the interview. Conversation with Swas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Anwar, the line seems a bit edgy, so I'm hoping that I'm hearing you correctly.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, I did. You can hear me correctly. Okay, that's good. Yes, I did start a consultancy, and basically it looks at business consulting as well as coaching. So coaching for businesses as well as life coaching. In particular, I think parenting seems to be a bit of a niche. So that's what the business represents. It's about having a genuine conversation with people in this age of technology and AI and digital technologies. I'm trying to take it back a little so that we can humanize that element.
Okay, excellent. It says you have just over 20 years of experience in South African retail, manufacturing, wholesale, and the brand business. So very experienced, but tell us a little bit about yourself and your past.
Sure. So yes, I've been across different industries. I think when I first started off, I spent a lot of time in retail, particularly working for landlords of shopping centers across KZN. And then I moved into a different retail marketing position, so strong marketing and commercial acumen. And part of the business also focused on manufacturing locally as well as exporting. So I would think, strategy, organizational transformation, communication. We could even throw in a bit of CSI into it. Those would sort of be my strengths over the last couple of years.
Okay, a very impressive CV. Doctorate in business administration. Where was that from?
DUT.
Okay, excellent. Wow, so we have a doctor in the house, so to speak, tonight. You also have a certificate in positive psychology, neuroscience, child psychology, and parenting. But tonight's topic is about building resilient businesses in times of economic uncertainty, and we know we're living in very, very uncertain times. I think unprecedented, if I could say so.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think if we look at this economic uncertainty that businesses go through, whether it's from the grassroots up or to the multinationals and corporates, the emotions are pretty much similar that organization would go through. And for me, I would look at it from a two-pronged perspective. One of it being the business leader themselves, the executives that are accountable personally, and then secondly, from an executive function that they serve within those businesses. And I think what's most important is, for the leader to be composed during these moments of uncertainty. And when a company and a person is going through this, there's definitely a combination of panic and short-term thinking. There's definitely a lack of strategic planning that comes into play because it's a merge of emotions and logic that combines. Part of the neurology course that I had studied as well taught me why does this happen? What happens to us and our bodies when this sort of state comes upon us? And it's actually a little part in our brain called the amygdala. And what it does is it either goes into a fight or flight response mode. And this is what happens when business leaders are going through these stages. The executive functioning skills are now compromised. So we cannot prioritize, self-monitor, keep to tasks, time management, stay focused, or understand different points of view. So I think the biggest challenge during economic uncertainty is for the leader to be composed and to maintain, a state of parasympathetic. And what that means is to not be in that fight or flight mode. It's in a mode of rest and digest where we could think calmly and clearly. And I think if we look at just the way the world of business operates now at the rate of technology and innovation, outside of just economic uncertainty, we are operating in a constant state of sympathetic fight or flight. So it's really important to have the leaders on board because it starts to affect our nervous system, our digestion, reproductive, our thyroids. There's a physical impact on that. But I think if you're looking from the second perspective, which is the executive function within the business, some of those common mistakes there would be, slashing expenses. That's the first one that everyone jumps into, and I've seen that so many times. It's a common mistake because it's just diving into it, and generally marketing or customer services or product development are the first categories to be cut short, rather than looking at efficiencies. If we had, for example, 1,000 rands to spend on marketing, we could look at what the return on investment is for marketing and rather spend 200 from the 1,000 rather than cutting it out completely. I think the supply chains not being strengthened in advance is also one of those key areas. Being a bit slow to react or inaction thereof as well. So whereas some people dive in head first and slash down all of their expenses, the opposite is also true. I've seen business leaders that just procrastinate and wait too long, to take direction or to pivot their business model. So failing to adapt is definitely one of those reasons where that economic uncertainty can, almost drive you through the wall. Innovation is also critical. It's generally one of the first things that are cut off. And I cannot stress the importance of innovation, especially during economic uncertainty. It's what puts us ahead of the competitors. Okay. I would also think maybe spending time with our customers. We tend to become a little bit internalized, and we start looking at internal cuts and looking at our spreadsheets and our balance sheets. And we forget to spend time with customers and actually understand what is happening in the field, to understand how to adapt our pricing strategies. Do we become a bit more flexible? Do we bundle pricing options? And I think the biggest one would also be layoffs. Generally we look at HR and where we can cut labor in the workforce. So looking at alternatives like flexible sort of working strategies where we could upskill existing employees, put someone to a contract or ad hoc basis, work from home. Those would sort of be the key solutions in how we could sort of prevent that economic uncertainty.
Okay. I think you used the word, was it amygdala? Am I right? Parts of the brain.
Sorry, Anwar?
I think you used a word called amygdala. Is that part of the brain?
Amygdala. Yes, okay. That's right. Yes.
So can I say, can I say our government seems to have a bit of amygdala problems at the moment, because Normally, I would be sitting here on this last Friday in February with Yasmin Suleiman discussing the budget, but they had problems with the budget last week. The budget never took place. All sorts of issues with the Minister of Finance and the budget and it had to be called off. So I'm not sure exactly when they're going to actually have the budget. But we know that there's that uncertainty now that you spoke about. The uncertainty comes from the very top, and when the uncertainty comes from the very top, from the Minister of Finance or the President, then the rest of the country gets jittery. And we even saw that in the collapse of the currency to a certain extent when they announced that they were not going to be having the budget. So you kind of hit the nail on the head by saying that that's a problem. The uncertainty starts from the top, and I'm saying in a kind of macro environment, it starts at the government level, and if they can't get it right, then very difficult for the rest of us to kind of get it right, because we rely on them to give us direction. Anyhow, let's talk a little bit about some of the issues you spoke about layoffs and cutting back on budgets, and I suppose all of these things are done to manage the cash flow, because when turnover drops and expenses are not curtailed, then really it has a serious impact on cash flow, and that's when management panics. And as you said, don't panic, rather sit back, digest, and do all of those good things. Easier said than done sometimes. But then it has an impact on cash flow. So how important is cash flow management during periods of economic instability? And what strategies could businesses use to keep their cash flow healthy?
Yes, so cash flow is definitely critical. I think whether there's economic instability or not, it is just critical, within the finance department of a business to ensure that it's constantly being monetized and monitored. The instability of cash flow can come from, sort of not forecasting correctly, and also delaying, financial adjustments. Those are two key reasons why a cash flow could not be prepared the way it needed to, so that we could have those business insights in advance and see them. But yes, it is critical to have a healthy cash flow. I mean, without it, your expenses are not paid, your rent, your suppliers, your payroll, you have to have a healthy cash flow. It goes without saying. And I think just monitoring cash flow projections, ideally on a weekly basis, is what would be best practice, not even monthly. In this economic uncertain times, weekly evaluation of cash flow is really critical. And I think also securing financial backups, whether it's needed or not, just having it there in advance, as a safety net, credit lines or investor support, wherever that sort of cash flow may come from. It's about building an emergency reserve for if and when the business would need that. I think planning for these contingencies in advance is what is ideal. So not waiting for these economic periods. Some of those strategies, Anwar, would be accelerating your receivables. So, offering discounts for early payments, for example, so that you've got cash coming in. Invoicing promptly and following up on them. I mean, there's so much of technology and AI out there to even automate those kind of processes. At the same time, you could also strategically manage your payables. So negotiate extended payment terms with your suppliers, prioritizing those expenses and which ones are critical and delaying the ones that are not so critical. You would also, sort of take advantage of early payment discounts that were offered to you if your cash flow can allow for it. So I think non-urgent capital expenditures could also be reviewed or postponed at this point in time. Optimizing operational efficiencies is another one that comes to mind. So reducing inefficiencies and looking at your workflow processes and how that could help you with a bit of cash. And I think the most common ones would be, diversifying your revenue stream, whatever that income is like right now. How do we add on more products or services to meet some of the consumers' changing needs, whether we explore that through digital or revenue subscription-based models or partnering with someone else. Inventory, we generally would have stock, in our DCs or en route if you're importing. So if you could reduce any existing stock, any excess stock, moving that through marketing, promotions, discounts, that would help free up your cash. So whenever you look at stock, if you have stock in the business and it's not a service-orientated business, stock is cash. That's what's holding up in the DC. So it's easier to get rid of those through promotions because that's what helps with that sort of cash injection. And I think, just communicating with stakeholders, being a bit transparent in that process.
Okay. All of which makes perfect sense. In this, what we call uncertain economic times, are there certain industries in your experience that are kind of more immune to these uncertainties, that are kind of resilient more than others? I mean, I'm kind of thinking along the lines of food, where one has to eat and basic staples have to be bought, whereas if you're taking the purchase of clothing, for example, it's maybe a luxury purchase. You can put off the buying of a dress or whatever. Not something a woman would take to very kindly, but food would be the priority and would be more resilient than a clothing, for example.
Yes, I think there's definitely some industries by nature of the industry itself that are a lot more adaptable to those economic shifts. It's just an inherent flexibility that they would have. And I think it also comes from innovation. A lot of it is the ability to pivot in response to that market demand. At the top of my head, I would think technology and digital services would be by far the easiest to transition and, scale or adapt to whatever those changing needs would be. We saw it during the pandemic of COVID. Retail had moved, into an e-commerce space overnight, and then they had to adapt because brick and mortar platforms were not working. So e-commerce and retail definitely have that added advantage. I've also seen it across financial services moving into a fintech sort of space, education moving into e-learning, logistics and supply chain, as well as media and entertainment. I think if we took a few examples, one of them would be the ShopRite Group by far. We've seen them on the planes, we've seen them at the World Cups and on the waterboards, right? The 60/60 is everywhere. And that itself is an example of leveraging existing infrastructure. They started their fulfillment from the stores itself, from physical stores. And then they partnered very strategically with Pingo, which was the delivery service, and they acquired a 50% stake in that so that they could control and manage those logistics really well. So aside from their exceptional management and execution, I think their marketing was really on point. So it was a good combination of efforts across the ShopRite team. And I mean, who hasn't seen a 60/60 little motorbike around in your community now? It's everywhere. Discovery is also a really good example where they've been known for financial services and health insurance to sort of merge. Vitality program is what is their number one trophy. And what they started to do is harvest their data analytics from their apps and gamification as well. So they've used all of these insights, and what they're doing is customizing solutions for Discovery members. So it's a very tailored solution, and it stands out from the competitors right now. There's so many. like MTN moved into MTN Momo, which was mobile money, and they started to take financial services into rural communities where banks are not accessible to those populations. Woolworths would also be a really good example. If I think of the food and supply chain side of the market, they've done really well with sustainability and adapting to the environment, reducing carbon footprints and strengthening their supply chain for their food side of the market. So they've really prioritized sustainability really well, and it's starting to show. And it appeals to a consumer that is conscious about the environment and sustainability and ESG levels. So there are a few, I think, industries definitely have their advantages based on the nature of trade.
Yeah, well, you've hit on two of the big role players in the retail market here, and being Checkers and Woolworths. And what one notices of late is the Checkers stores are starting to look really, really good. I mean, if you walk into one of the refurbished stores or the newly built ones, they kind of taking Woolworths on head on. They've upped their game, so to speak. Left Pick and Pay kind of sitting on the roadside, and have really gone and it's now become a place where you actually look forward to going in. And I think Woolworths probably have got a scare because they realize that Checkers are serious about taking them on. Swastika, we've got to go for a little bit of an ad break. We have some expenses to meet here as well. So when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our lovely conversation. Your company called Conversation with Swas, so I'm enjoying that. We'll delve a little bit into in communication with employees and the like that companies can undertake to lift the morale of the business. So let's just go for an ad break.
Your station, my station, our station, Radio Al Ansar.
Business Matters.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you've just joined us, it's Business Matters on Radio Al Ansar. You with me, Anwar Moolla. And I've been having a very, very nice conversation with Swastika Juggernath. She is the director of a firm called Conversation with Swas, a business management consulting firm. Also has certificates in positive psychology, neuroscience, child psychology, and parenting. And should I say it's Dr. Swastika Juggernath. And we've been talking about difficult economic times of economic uncertainty. And I would be safe to say that there was no more uncertain time than the COVID times that you alluded to a little bit earlier. Give us some of your experiences in terms of the times of COVID, your customers at the time. What was the kind of buzz around them, their businesses, and how did they adapt? Okay, while we're waiting for Zakaria to try to sort out our problems, Dr. Swastika, can you hear us? Swastika.
I can hear you now, Anwar.
Okay. Sorry about that. We had a bit of a break in the studio, but our technician Zakaria, who's sitting here behind the scenes, has managed to get us back on. Let's carry on from where we left off. And I was saying that we've lived through these uncertain times called COVID. Surely interesting times, but difficult times. What were some of your experiences with your clients during the COVID times, the common problems that they faced, and what were your recommendations to them to kind of ease them through those uncertain times?
Anwar, I got that in pieces.
Okay.
Can I just ask you to repeat the last bit, please?
I said, during the uncertain COVID times, what were some of your kind of challenges that some of your clients faced, and how did you kind of ease them through those difficult times?
So I think with clients, the biggest challenges was the not knowing, and I think for me as an executive within an organization, communication is critical. With all stakeholders, employees, and every other stakeholder, be that internal or external. Communication would be critical. I cannot stress how important that is to maintain your morale, to build that trust and alignment between the organization, employees, and stakeholders. Being clear, transparent about whatever is happening within the organization, and admitting the uncertainties that do exist. We're all human. Every one of us that's working within these organizations. And it's good to be human, and then show people that we are also experiencing these tough times, and be flexible as well. I think flexibility with staff is really critical when work arrangements need to be put into place. Sometimes they need a bit of mental health support even. And that's really good to offer, to extend that sort of coaching or mentoring or one-on-one time that they need. Also important within communication is the two-way flow of communication, because often enough we've seen many organizations that sort of dictate or send communication with a top-down sort of flow. And there isn't that opportunity to ask questions or, eradicate rumors that would obviously pop up during a time like economic uncertainty. So if something is vague or inconsistent, that panic-driven state can now be suppressed, and staff or stakeholders can be reassured of whatever the realities of these uncertain times that you're going through. So it is a challenging period for everyone. And I think that's why I started off in the very beginning saying that it's really important for the senior executives and leaders to stay calm and composed. And if, they're on top of their game, it starts to filter down and everyone starts to understand that when there is panic and mayhem and we're trying to cover it up and, hide behind different communication channels or press releases or put a face to it, that's a billboard communicating to our staff. Doesn't work because they can sense through all of that tension, right? We're humans. We all can see through it. We can read through the body language. It's not enough. You would need those sort of weekly emailers going out, team meetings, town halls, newsletters, whatever it is that's going to put people at ease. You don't want the internal forces within the organization to have that sort of, anxiety. You want to create realistic expectations of what is expected from them as staff during these periods. How do they plug into this bigger picture or challenges or storm that you're facing right now, so that everybody's on the same page and lead by example. You want to be that leader that demonstrates in your behavior what it is to be in that little storm and how to get out of it. We're going to be human. We're going to accept what is there. We're going to be truthful, be honest about it, and find solutions together, because it's not just the execs that are going to find the solutions. Most often, it's your staff and people that are on the ground with consumers that can feed through some insights, and help you. And that can only happen if there's a flow of two-way communication happening between your stakeholders, staff, and the company itself.
Well, yeah, you said try to remain calm and not get flustered. But as management of business, when there's times of uncertainty and, as you said, panic sets in, when they say a person's got their back against a wall, they end up doing some irrational things. So, yes, it's good to remain calm, but not quite so possible. And when you have your back against the wall, you do some things that actually can end up hurting the business. So I suppose the answer is to be consulting with more people, taking more advice, but to be calm in uncertain times, especially when the company is going through terrible situations. One only knows you're tossing and turning at night and not being able to sleep. Sometimes easier said than done. Okay, we've got a few minutes left, and let's talk a bit about innovation, because we in a third world country, we're seeing what's playing out in America now with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and cutting funding and cutting aid, and and they say when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, especially the third world countries. When you see all of this playing out, and how do you react to it?
Yeah, I think, Anwar, for me, innovation is critical.
Right.
Whether there's economic uncertainty or not, innovation is critical. It is something you need to invest resources, time, strategy, and attention to as a business leader. Particularly in these uncertain times, this culture of innovation is taking the world by storm. On its own, and you have to adapt to survive, to thrive, right? Because if you don't, your competitors will, whether you adapt or not, whether you are ahead of that curve or whether you're sleeping on it and waiting for someone to come and shine a light or get the world to help you. No, the world owes you nothing. If you do not innovate, you will become irrelevant. I think Albert Einstein said that as well. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? So you have to innovate. You have to adapt, because these sort of quick pivots help you meet those consumers' needs, whatever that change is that is in the market space, whether it's new markets, new customers, responding to economic shifts, whatever that is. If you do not adapt, you're going to fail, and it's going to be, it's going to be quite upsetting to the business model, to the systems, to the structures. It's going to start collapsing if you don't innovate. And we saw that, COVID definitely did that, though that was a key time as well. Operational efficiencies is also quite critical because it also helps you to streamline your processes, interrogate your workflow management systems, reduce sort of processes that don't work for you or don't support the business anymore, and how it can improve productivity. Automation, AI, these are also examples of innovation, that can help you speed up your processes, whether you're in manufacturing, for example, and help you reduce costs as well. At the same time, there's profitability in that process as well. I think of a logistics company as well that I recently heard about, and then they were using AI to optimize their delivery routes as well as their warehouse management system. And they had reduced the operational costs drastically, as well as the speed of the delivery of service. So innovation is critical. There's different ways that you can look at innovation. It gives you that competitive advantage. It lets you stay ahead of that game. It lets you stand out and attract customers as well as retain existing market share. Customer experiences are critical for innovation. If I think of Netflix and maybe Spotify and how they customize their algorithms to serve you sort of personalized recommendations and content, it just enhances your user experience and in your engagement with those brands and their apps. So innovation is really critical for collaborations as well. So, you could collaborate with brands that you've never dreamed of. I see footwear brands and car automated brands that are collaborating, and you would never have dreamed of these collaborations or seen the resonance between the two. But collaborations pique interest and curiosity amongst a market segment, especially if you could tap into a totally new market segment by those kinds of collaborations. So it's about pulling those resources together, sharing those risks during collaborations, and expanding into potentially new markets that makes you even more resilient when you do collaborate. And I think when you are innovative in your approach as a leader, you also retain talent within the business because there's a culture of innovation that starts to flow through the business, and employees are attracted to that, forward-thinking employees at least, who thrive in that sort of dynamic, evolving environment. And that's the stuff that we do want to retain. It helps them to sort of feel empowered in the process of innovation as well. So, like I said, people at grassroots level are also there to help, build those insights and feed it back up into the channels. And I think just long-term innovation just helps with sustainability and growth. Unilever would be maybe one example, and the way they approach sustainability, through their products and friendly production practices, packaging, because they look at global environmental concerns and what is important to the consumer and what is that narrative or marketing story that they want to put in front of that consumer. So there's many avenues of exploring innovation and how it is, possible to take that into the market space and create a revenue from it. It's not just your product or your service or the packaging. It's multifaceted as a whole. I think digital transformation as well, is another form of innovation. So there's many avenues to explore, but innovation is the lifeline in a business.
Okay.
Whether it is an economic uncertain time or not, innovation is critical.
Okay, we've got a few seconds left. Your passing comments on to the listeners of Radio Al Ansar. Dr. Swastika, any parting comments for the listeners? Okay, we seem to have a sound problem. She can't hear us. But anyway, we've come to the end of today's program. So a very big thank you to Dr. Swastika, as much as she can't hear us at the moment, for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure having her here. And hopefully I can get her in the studio sometime in the future to share her valuable insights, because having her virtually, unfortunately, hasn't been fantastic. We've had communication problems, but we thank you very much for being with us tonight. And this would be the last show for me before the month of Ramadan. And I'd like to wish one and all of you a spiritually uplifting Ramadan. Remember all of us in your du'as as well, as we will you. And and enjoy the month ahead. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.